Hi, welcome to our channel of IGNOU audiobooks. Indira Gandhi National Open University, School of Continuing Education, Bachelor's Degree Program, Elective Course, Gender Studies, BGSE 001 Gender Sensitization, Society, Culture and Change, Block 1 Conceptualizing Gender. Unit 4 Gender in Everyday Life. 4.1 Introduction. As the title of the unit indicates, our main aim is to develop familiarity with the meaning and various dimensions of social construction of gender through case studies and citing examples. The social construction of gender speaks about the relationship of gender with various institutions like caste, kinship, marriage, and so on. The process of gender construction can be explained in relation to the aspects of women's lives like work, decision making, honor killing, and the notion of autonomy and freedom. Gender construction operates both at the macro and micro level and is very much embedded in the institutional arrangements of society. In this unit, gender construction is being explained from sociological and cultural perspectives to understand the complex phenomenon of women's discrimination and inequality faced by women on account of their sex and socially constructed gender. The unit discusses the meaning of social construction of gender. It starts with explaining the meaning of social construction and understanding gender in relation to culture, sex segregation, work, forced participation, decision making, honor killing, and notion of autonomy and freedom. The next section on gender construction focuses broadly on culture and various structures like work, sex segregation, and division of labor, which perpetuates the existing gender divisions on the basis of sex difference. Similarly, in the section on work and the sexual division of labor, we discuss gender as an analytical tool to understand the inequalities which are reflected in ways of hierarchization of tasks, unequal distribution of resources, invisibility of women's work in agriculture and informal economy, and the sex segregation in spheres of work within the household. This unit has been adapted from Unit 3 of MGS 001 of MA in Gender and Development Studies program. Let us look at the objectives of reading this unit. 4.2 Objectives. After reading this unit, you will be able to times explain the processes of gender construction in relation to culture and ordering of society. Times examine the implications of gender construction in relation to development indicators like sex segregation, division of labor, decision making, and socialization. Times examine the relationship between gender and the structural arrangements of the society, and Times analyze the necessary features of the universal position of gender construction. 4. 3. Social construction and gender. It is very often said that there is no such thing as a social reality. Further, the question is asked, what are social constructions? How is the vision of a society or its social construction shaped? Is it shaped automatically? Is it culture specific? Let us examine this process of social construction. Every day we observe various objects, experience several events related with various social interactions. These phenomena that are experienced individually help to develop an image of society or the world. Indeed, we filter everything that happens to us every day through the lens or screen of our understanding of our world and society. This everyday sense of the world or things forms the basis of social reality or construction of social reality. In this sense, social construction is a social process in which both individuals and other social institutions and practices are intrinsically related. Social construction is also influenced, shaped, and dominated by the interests of a particular group or class of people. In this sense, culture, norms, ideologies, and values of the dominant group are used to justify and sustain a particular form of social construction. Hence, Social constructions are processes through which we understand everyday life and try to classify people on the basis of caste, class, religion, community, kinship, gender, and so on. This classification of people is the consequence of social construction. Check your progress. 1. What is social construction? 2. How are groups classified on the basis of social constructions? Let us now read about the relationship between social construction and gender. As we explore social construction of gender, we will focus on aspects such as the distinction between sex and gender as well as cultural construction of gender. Sex and gender. Understanding of the social construction of gender starts with explaining two concepts, i.e., gender and sex. These two terms bear different meanings as concepts. Gender refers to differences, hierarchies, rankings which exist between female and male. It explains cultural constructions associated with various roles that are played by women and men in the society. Further, gender analyzes the aspect of shaping women's behavior according to the normative order of the society. Gender as a conceptual tool is used to analyze the structural relationships of inequality existing between women and men. This inequality gets reflected in family and household, religion, caste, labor market, education, ecology, scientific establishments, and political institutions. Sex, on the other hand, refers to the biological differences between female and male which remain same across time and place. Gender can, therefore, be defined as a notion that offers a set of frameworks within which the social and ideological construction and representation of differences between the sexes are explained. Gender socialization is a process through which children come to acquire the position of a social being by identifying themselves with definite gender roles and conform to socially appropriate behaviors and attributes as females and males. Stanley and Wise, 2002. Women's identification with universally accepted mothering role, their subjective experiences as embodiment of love, care, support, and men's proximity with public domain characterized by impersonal and professional nature are the products of sociocultural constructions of femininity and masculinity. Social expectations from women as natural mothers, wives, daughters, and homemakers not only exist as patriarchal constructions, but also operate in the material environment of the society. Some feminist geographers have argued that space and gender are socially constructed and women's bodies, their activities, and mobility are limited to certain physical territories and structures. For instance, home is thought to be constructed through women's gender roles, at the same time restricts women access to freedom and mobility. In the same way, women who work outside the household and travel at night to work in call centers often meet with sexual harassment, rape, and murder. This is a discourse in the theory of feminization of labor, which shows how time-space of call center industries are also gendered in nature. Patel, 2010. Sex connects the individual with her/his sex categorization and eventually restricts the individual within the social notion of femininity and masculinity. This process of gender socialization is enabling the person to maintain her/his sex categorization at the societal level. 4th March 2001 Cultural construction of gender. Gender is a complex phenomenon which is socially constructed and culturally determined. Culture can be described as a network of relationships that attaches meaning to the pattern of living of a particular community and group. Culture covers almost every facets of life, including organization of production, structure of family, and other institutions, ideologies, and normative patterns of the society, and nature of interactions or relations. Cultural construction of gender talks about the construction of masculinity and femininity in the context of socialization i.e., individuals acquire gendered bodies of being feminine or masculine in the course of social development. The construction of femininity and masculinity is also shaped by the institutions of family, economic, political, and religious organizations. Gender construction in relation to culture can be explained through the following points. Times gender construction supports the system of dominance. Gender categories are never neutral nor are they equal. Gender as a system of unequal relations between women and men gets manifested in spheres of work, production processes, access to resources and power, accepting the specific gender roles, and sex segregation in the labor market. Times gender construction vis-a-vis individual expression of gender. Feminist psychoanalysts assess that gender cannot be seen as an exclusively cultural, linguistic, and political construction. Therefore, we need to make a distinction between prescriptive construction of gender and individual reflections of these constructions. Prescriptive construction of gender refers to those images which are socially, historically, culturally determined. For example, socializing a girl child to become a homemaker in future is deep-rooted attitude in the society and manifested through dress code, appropriate conduct, and women's engagement in caregiving or nurturing activities. Individual inflections are made by the interaction of an individual psyche with sociopolitical or cultural or historical norms. For example, if a boy-girl undergoes sex reassignment surgery, there may be couple of questions that need analysis, such as how do societies respond to variations in an individual's expression of gender identity? To what extent do members of societies internalize various gender roles and behaviors? This point brings us to the discussion of doing gender as a concept. Doing gender involves a complex set of socially governed perceptual, interactional, and micro-political activities that cast a particular action as an expression of masculine or feminine nature. West and Zimmerman 2002. Therefore, gender is inherent to social situations, i.e., it is both a product of and produced by social arrangements. The newborn only carries the sex identity that is imposed upon the individual by the society. Eventually, through continuous interaction with the parents or primary caretaker, the infant accomplishes gender identity. Doing gender is a process that legitimizes this fundamental gender division in the society. Box No. 4.1. Case of Agnes, a transsexual boy. West and Zimmerman discuss the three analytical categories such as sex, sex category, and gender to understand the notion of doing gender. Garfinkel's case study of Agnes, a transsexual boy, would be an APT example for understanding gender construction. Agnes adopted a female identity at the age of 17 and underwent sex reassignment surgery some years later to understand gender construction. She possessed male genitals and required to project herself as a woman. She was obliged to learn the feminine characteristics and analyze the conception of femininity within the socially structured situation. She did not possess the socially agreed attributes of the biological category to be classified as the female sex. More central to this argument is Kessler and McKenna's position, i.e., the biological criterion, sex, is hidden from the public perception and the individual continues to behave according to the socially agreed criteria of male or female. Male or female are the products of the gender attribution process and form an important part of gender accomplishment activities. For example, if a child sees a picture of a person with suit and tie, immediately the child connects the picture with the image of a man. The sex category is socially situated and acquired by the individual through everyday interaction. People perceive the activity of an individual and deduce the category of sex. In this context, gender is understood to be the product of culture and society. Refer West and Zimmerman, 2002. The above-mentioned examples show how the categories of masculinity and femininity are socially constructed, and the gender identity can only be established in conformation with the biological categorization. 4th March 2002 Socialization. Socialization is the process by which the child transforms into a social being by adhering to social values, norms, and socially desired behavior. Sex role socialization is a means to women's oppression in the larger context. Stanley and Wise argue that sex role is often understood as gender role, i.e., expressing attributes of femininity or masculinity. Family as an institution supports in internalizing gender socialization and gender roles across cultures. Mother or primary caretaker responds differently to the child on the basis of sex categorization. The differential attitude includes touching, caring, and ideas about autonomy of boys and absence of autonomy of girls. The more parents display differential behavior like exposing children to specific types of toys, exposing to various books where pictures identify the role of mother in kitchen, projection of gender roles and behavior in televisions, more the child will express gender stereotypes in daily life. Family and parents are seen primary agencies through which gender stereotypes are communicated to the children. Stanley and Sue Wise 2002. Check your progress. 1. What is cultural construction of gender? 2. Define socialization. Let us now read about cultural construction of a girl child. 4th March 2003 Construction of a girl child. The construction of a girl child discusses the process of socializing a girl child in patrilineal and patriarchal societies like India. This section highlights constraints that a girl faces in the process of socializing herself as a woman. Dubey, 2001, refers to the process of socialization as form of gender socialization in which women and men are produced as gendered subjects. These gendered subjects are created through the medium of language, rituals, ceremonies, and practices. In Indian families, the notion of gender difference begins with the sphere of reproduction. Both mother and father share different roles in relation to procreation. It is culturally considered that the father is the provider of seed and mother symbolizes earth who receives the seed and nurture it. These role differences are culturally imagined and continue through family, marriage, and kinship. Therefore, family and kinship are central to the understanding of gender socialization. Girl child and the natal home. The construction of femininity is a continuous and complex process and is conveyed through language, proverbs, and rituals. The context of natal home for both married and unmarried daughters is widely used in the form of proverbs in the process of socialization. The desire for a boy child is explicit in the day-to-day conversation in forms of speech saying. For instance, parents who have only daughters are often perceived in a situation where the future is dark as they are not having any old age support. Dubey 2001. Similarly, the parental home is always referred to as a temporary shelter for girls. Therefore, girls grow up with the notion of having their own home in future after marriage. Proverbs and rituals give the realization of this inevitable fact of transferring the girl's membership from her natal home to the home of her husband. Dubey documented some of the proverbs spoken in various parts of India. In Odisha, there is a saying that equates daughter with ghee, meaning that is both are valuable. However, both start to stink if not disposed of at the right time. Similarly, there are festivals like Durga Puja and Gauri Puja which reiterate the idea of homecoming in the context of the goddess. These festivals are full of rituals which convey the message to young girls of their reality to leave their mother's home and that they will be invited to the natal home on these festivals. The construction of a girl child begins with the feeling of getting temporary membership at the parental home, and the inevitability of learning some of the ideal feminine behavior in due course. The process of socialization of the girl child involves cultural construction of femininity at the prepubertal and postpubertal phases. The importance of prepubertal purity amongst the girls has been given special recognition in rituals of various regions of India like Maharashtra, West Bengal, Karnataka, and other parts as well. Box No. 4.2. Case Analysis. In Navratri, the custom of worshipping and feeding virgin girls is widely practiced across India. On the 8th day of the festival, prepubertal girls, who represent Mother Goddess, are worshipped and offered food along with other gifts as part of the ritual. It can be inferred for a gender analysis that in this festival the forms assigned to the girls are essentially feminine in nature. 2. The consciousness of femininity is constructed through their dressing style and from the gifts offered to them, and 3. A sharp distinction can be made between the phases of prepuberty and postpuberty, and consequently, there is a sense of purity and sacredness associated with the prepubertal phase of women's lives. The construction of femininity is symbolized in these rituals, and the sense of appropriate feminine behavior systematically built into the minds of the girl children. The onset of puberty is the phase which is marked by changes and transformation in a woman's life. This phase is associated with several pubertal rituals, dietary prescriptions, and seclusion of girls for certain days. These are practiced widely across India. These pubertal rituals are expressing the significance of maintaining sexual purity for girls in the context of marriage and motherhood. 4.4 Practice of Sex Segregation. Sex segregation is mostly observed and studied within occupational and economic structures, which reflects women entering into a particular kind of profession in the regime of any economic reform. Pardah, or the practice of female seclusion, is widely followed across countries and communities, and it prescribes obvious gender segregation in tasks and activities. In Bangladesh, the practice of female seclusion operated according to the inside-outside divide. The author says that the poor women in Bangladesh are subjected to a twofold process of stereotyping. Poor women are perceived to be passive and vulnerable, yet they are regarded as the potential target groups for development. These images of women have been reinforced through cultural constructions like women are always in need of male protection for their survival. For example, the notion of the inside-outside divide has curtailed women's freedom to move beyond the premises of the household. Therefore, they perform activities within the sphere of domesticity. Kabir 1990. In the labor market, there is a wide division between men and women in terms of differential wages, nature of work, and the amount of work. Traditionally, women have been perceived to be dependent on men. For instance, within the family, women have access to resources through their male counterparts. Similarly, women in the labor market go through the male channels in accessing wage and other job opportunities. Majority of women are concentrated in the unorganized sector, 95.79% of female workers as compared to 89.77% of male workers. There is segregation on the basis of gender within the labor market, and this division has led to rising socio-economic insecurities for women working in the unorganized and private sectors, SAT 2001. Similarly, women's participation in the field of political and technical employment is very low. In the agricultural sector, women have substantial contribution, however they are mostly employed as marginal workers. In agriculture, there is segregation with regard to nature of work assigned to women and men. In most of the states in India, men are engaged in ploughing and irrigation-related activities, and women engaged in tasks like sowing, nurturing of plants and harvesting. It is seen that men are associated with marketing operations of the agricultural produce, control of resource and surplus is considered to be the domain of men. Further, the role of women as primary caretaker make them readily accept flexible and temporary jobs. As rightly pointed out, women have always been considered as reserve army which could be kept outside the labor market to be used during labor crisis. Women have no formal contract as employees and are exposed to poor safety conditions and other vulnerabilities. Women as the workforce are of primary importance to the global economy and are at the same time devoid of health and labor protection. Check your progress. 1. How does sex segregation help to understand gender construction? 2. What is understood by cultural construction of a girl child? Let us read about what is understood by division of labor and the sphere of work. 4.5 Division of labor and the sphere of work. Gender relations are situated within the sexual division of labor and often create gender conflict. For instance, agriculture in Africa is often perceived to be female system of farming. Within agriculture, the sphere of work is divided along gender lines. In Africa, the separation of the sphere of work between women and men implies the social exchange of labor between women and men. However, women's sphere of work is surrounded by a complex set of claims and obligations. As Whitehead argues, two different kinds of social environment govern women's economic activity in Africa. In women's sphere of work, they have access to resources like land, and the produce was shared with her children, husband, and other family members. Women have the obligation to work for their husbands and other family members, but there is no direct written benefit received by women in exchange of her labor. Women's labor is constructed within the social climate of rights and obligations. Women's work in the husband's field is conceptualized under her general rights to welfare and maintenance as a household member. Bosrup's book Women's Role in Economic Development is widely acknowledged within the field of women's work. Box No. 4. 3. Bosrup discussed the systems of farming such as female system vis male system of farming practiced in countries of Africa and Asia, respectively. African farming exhibits a trend towards female system of farming characterized by family labor with higher percentage of female labor force participation, women accessing freedom and mobility, high bride price, son preference was less featured. The plough culture of Asian farming exhibits a trend towards male system of farming characterized by higher participation of male-waged labor indicating women's exclusion from farming. This practice of women's seclusion from agriculture was reproduced through social norms such as women's lack of inheritance right, dowry, system of son preference, and increasing rate of female mortality resulting into adverse sex ratio in the population. Refer Kabir, 2010. The model explained in Box No. 4.3 explicitly discusses the notion of sexual division of labor in the context agriculture. To begin with, the author describes African farming as a female system of farming that clearly relegated women to the periphery in the wake of modernization and economic development. Whitehead argued to show how agriculture is gendered in nature. The cash crop sector is managed by the men folk and the food crop sector is organized through women's labor. This model emphasized the feminine nature of subsistence farming and women's inability to participate in the modern farming sector in the African context. However, this framework was criticized on the ground that it completely neglected women's contribution in modern food production. To meet the increasing cash needs of the African households, women have significantly contributed to family labor for cash cropping or increased trading. Work is often understood to be physical and mental labor. Hochschild, cited by Redfern and IGNOU 2010, coined the term emotional labor that reflects the particular kind of work associated with care and nurture. Emotional labor is associated with female occupation both in the domain of family and work sphere, therefore needs to be accepted as a particular forms of skill to be paid in future. Within family, women's unpaid work is described as a labor of love and remains unremunerated in national accounting system. Labor of love. Have you many children? The doctor asked. God has not been kind to me. Of 15 born, only 9 live. Does your wife work? No, she stays at home. I see. How does she spend her day? Doctor asked. Well, she gets up at 4 in the morning, fetches water and wood, makes the fire and cooks breakfast. Then she goes to the river and washes clothes. After that she goes to town to get corn ground and buys what we need in the market. Then she cooks the midday meal. You come home at midday. No, she brings the meal to me in the fields, about 3 kilometers from home. And after that? Well, she takes care of the hens and pigs, and of course she looks after the children all day. Then she prepares the supper so it is ready when I come home. Does she go to bed after supper? No, I do. She has things to do around the house until about 9 o'clock. But of course you say wife doesn't work? Of course she doesn't work. I told you, she stays at home. Source, ILO, 1977, quoted by Mitta, 2002. This above-mentioned extract describes the nature of labor associated with women and considered not only to be feminine in nature, but also invisible and unremunerated. 4.6 Summing UP. The unit discusses the concept of gender, while making the distinction between biological sex and social gender. The unit contributes towards the understanding of gender both as a social as well as a cultural construction. Gender as a social division has impacted women and men differentially in the contexts of socialization, work, sex segregation, and division of labor. 4.7 Keywords. Kinship. Kinship is a relationship between individuals who share a genealogical origin through biological, cultural, or historical descent. Honor killing. Honor killing is the killing of a member of a family or social group by other members due to the belief of the perpetrators and potentially the wider community that the victim has brought dishonor upon the family or community. Honor killings are directed mostly against women and girls. 4.9 Unit N Questions. 1. Is gender socially constructed? Substantiate your arguments with suitable examples. 2. Explain gender as a product of society and culture. 3. How do aspects like division of labor and sex segregation explain the notion of femininity and masculinity?
Thank you for watching. We will see you in the next video with the next chapter.